They say the neon lights are bright on Broadway. They say there's always magic in the air. But when you're walking down that street and you ain't had enough to eat, the glitter rubs right off and you ain't nowhere. They say the girls are something else out here on Broadway. They're looking good, y'all, but looking at them just gives me the blues. Cause how are you gonna make some time when all you got is one thin dime, and one thin dime won't even shine your shoe on Broadway? They say that I won't last too long out here on Broadway. They say I'm gonna catch a Greyhound bus and try to make it home one day. But they are wrong, I know they are, cause the song I'm singing are from my heart, and I ain't gonna stop until I'm a star on Broadway. I'm talking about Broadway. But they are wrong, I know they are, cause these songs I'm singing are from my heart, and I ain't gonna stop until I'm a star on Broadway. Talking about out here on Broadway, y'all. I'm gonna have my name up in lights down around Times Square somewhere out here on Broadway. Looking good on Broadway. Feeling good on Broadway. On Broadway.
One, two, three. Slow down, you move too fast. You got to make the morning last. Just kicking down the cobblestones, looking for fun and feeling groovy. Ba-da-da-da-da-da, feeling groovy. Hello lamppost, what you knowin'? I come to watch your flowers growing. Ain't you got no rhymes for me? Do it and do-do, feeling groovy. Ba-da-da-da-da-da, feeling groovy. I got no deeds to do, no promises to keep. I'm dappled and drowsy and ready to sleep. Let the morning time drop all its petals on me. Life, I love you, all is groovy.
Shuffled through the city on a 4th of July, had a firecracker waiting to blow, breaking like a rocker who was making his way to the cities of Mexico. Lived in an apartment out on Avenue A, at a tall on a corner of town. Had myself a lover who was finer than gold, but I've been broken, I've been busted up since. Loved her picture that would fit in the folds of my wallet, and it stayed pretty good. Still amazed that as I'm losing on a loop of the place. When I was drunk and I was thinking of you. Every day the children, they were singing the tunes out on the streets, and you could hear from inside. You used to take the subway on the house in the third. I would wait for you and not try to hide. Love won't play any games with you anymore if you don't want them to. World won't wait, watch you shake, but honey, I don't blame you. Hell, I still love you, New York. Hell, I still love you, New York. New York. I remember Christmas in the blistering cold in the church on the Upper West Side. Babe, I stood there singing, I was holding your arm, you were holding my trust like a child. Found a lot of trouble out on Avenue B, but I tried to keep the overhead low. Farewell to the city and the love of my life, please we left before we had to go. Love won't play any games with you anymore if you don't want them to. Sweep as she, this old thing out the door. I'll always be thinking of you. I'll always love you though, New York. 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 New York, New York.
We're going to get started in just a few minutes.
Singing them straight to the heart zone, blaming it on the nights on Broadway. Singing them sweet sounds to that crazy, crazy town.
Even if it takes forever, I will wait. Even if it takes a lifetime, somehow I feel inside you never ever left my side. Make it like it was before. Even if it takes a lifetime, takes a lifetime. On the nights on Broadway, singing them love songs, singing them straight to the heart zone, blaming it all. On the nights on Broadway, singing them sweet sounds to that crazy, crazy town, blaming it all. On the nights on Broadway, singing them love songs, singing them straight to the heart zone, blaming it all. On the nights on Broadway, singing them sweet sounds, singing them crazy, crazy town, blaming it all. On the nights on Broadway.
Well, good morning, everybody. It's Monday, beginning a week, and what are we beginning with? Heat, intense heat. It's going to be a very hot week, particularly the first half of the week. And I'm going to talk about in a moment the heat advisory and what we're doing to address it. But first, I want to talk about a challenge we have been facing over these last weeks as a result of the perfect storm that we're experiencing here in this city. Crisis layered upon crisis, all the challenges created by the coronavirus. And we know there's been an uptick in shootings in recent weeks. We know there's been a real problem with violence that must be addressed. And we know the best way to address it is with communities. And you see all over the city, community members stepping forward, elected officials, clergy, Cure Violence Movement and Crisis Management System, a whole host of people and organizations occupying the corners. What that means is taking back the neighborhood, making clear that violence won't be acceptable. All the good people who work so hard in this city want their neighborhoods to be safe, need their neighborhoods to be safe. They're doing something about it. And they understand, and we understand, that the best way to achieve lasting safety is with communities and NYPD working together. And the outpouring of community involvement and support has been striking. It's also important that the city government keep investing in communities, going at the root causes of so many of the challenges we face, and investing particularly in our young people. And that means investing in youth programs, youth centers. We're going to be talking about that in a moment as well. But because we're facing a perfect storm, and no one can doubt that, all of the combined crises and traumas together have created an aberrant situation where we saw crime uptick, and a lot of the normal realities just weren't there to address it. We've got to fix that now. Thank God New York City has made so much progress. On the health front, we got to keep that progress, defend that progress, but we also have to restart all the pieces of the criminal justice system to make sure that if, God forbid, someone has committed an act of violence and means to do harm to their community members, that we can do something about it. So the bottom line is, our criminal justice system needs to get back to full strength. Our courts not only need to reopen, they need to reopen fully as quickly as possible. Now remember, the disruption here has been striking. And I want to say to everyone in the court system, to the DAs, NYPD, everyone went through massive disruption. A lot of people were sick. It was impossible to do some of the normal things because of the precautions that had to be taken. So this is very clearly something where we're all in it together. I want to make sure everyone hears that. We are all in this together, and everyone's been through a tremendous amount of disruption. But now is the time to overcome that and start to rebuild so we can really address the violence issue together. A striking reality that there's a huge backlog when it comes to cases involving violent crime. Only 50% of firearms charges have even gotten to the point of indictment. And obviously, we need to go from indictment through the trial process and determining the fair resolution. And those who need to feel consequences have to experience those consequences in a speedier fashion. That's not happening right now. So I want to call together all of the players. I've sent this letter this morning to the chief judge and the 5 district attorneys saying, let's all work together. Let's get this right. I want to convene everyone and figure out what can the city of New York do to help each of you and all of your colleagues to get this right. Because again, just a little beginning of the court system won't get it done. We need to find a way to get back to full strength. And there are obvious issues of health and safety. We want to help. We have a lot of spaces we can make available, personnel to help address the health and safety issues. But I'm going to work with all of my colleagues, the DAs, the chief judge, everyone in this system to get it right, because we owe it to the people of our communities. And I have spent time with some of the families that have lost loved ones. That is a searing, painful experience when you see what happens to a family, especially now thinking today, in the day of his funeral of little DeVell Gardner Jr. and meeting with his family and the pain they're going through. No family in New York City should ever have to go through that. And when you think about that pain, it's incumbent upon all of us to re-glue the criminal justice system, get it going at full strength, and make sure there are consequences for those who would harm their fellow New Yorker. Now, that said, that is how we bring all the pieces together, but we have to keep moving each and every piece as energetically as possible. And this is why our focus on young people is crucial. After really huge challenges in March and April, all of us together were able to rebound and restart summer programming for young people. I want to thank the City Council for the leading role they played in helping us put that together. But we also have to do more. We have to create more and better safe spaces for young people. Think about it for a moment. If you're a young person in New York City, you need safe places to go. You need places to grow and develop. You need places for recreation and culture. We don't have enough of those spaces. We need to create more. So today we're going to talk about one of the examples of that kind of investment that's going to make such a big difference. Right in the heart of Brooklyn, in a community that needs this support. And remember what's so important here. This is about our priorities. And this is an example of resources we took from the NYPD budget and are putting into young people, reprogramming our resources to help young people, to put them on the right path, to stop problems before they begin. So today we're going to talk about the new recreation center that will be created at the Nostrum Playground in Flatbush, Brooklyn. And it's going to be amazing. It's going to have an indoor pool and a track and a kitchen for community cooking lessons and all sorts of wonderful amenities that will help community members to have great options, especially our young people. And we're going to begin a process of engagement with the community this fall on how to specifically create this center in a way that will be most helpful to the community. And now I want to thank and celebrate and let you hear from the 2 driving forces behind this great project. Both of them put a huge amount of time and energy into envisioning this and bringing it to life. And I can attest to the many times they spoke to me about the need to get this done, and we're getting it done now. So first I want to turn to Assembly Member Rodneyce Bishop.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mayor. It's a pleasure to be here today to speak to all of New Yorkers, to talk about how we are transforming lives and how we're transforming the recent reallocation of funding that's going to go directly into our community needs, our youth, our seniors, our engagement. Again, my name is Assemblymember Rodneyce Bishop. I represent the 42nd Assembly District, which is the core of Brooklyn, of Flatbush, and also where the Caribbean immigrant thrives and Little Haiti thrives. I am here today and pleased to join Mayor Bill de Blasio and my colleague, Councilmember Farrah Lewis, to announce the planned opening of a community recreation center, again, in the heart of Flatbush, Brooklyn. The recreation center will be built, as you heard, at the Nostrum Playground and will serve as a safety for our youth, a hub for learning and community and civic engagement. People of all ages looking to exercise and get fit will be able to come to the center to improve their health. The center will also feature an outdoor space to allow for social distancing as is needed. As you may know, our community has faced an uphill battle this year. My district has had the highest rate of infection and fatality of almost any neighborhood in the city regarding COVID-19. Racial disparities in our education, housing, and healthcare systems have been highlighted by the pandemic. We are also combating an increase in shootings. For years, children in our neighborhood have been looking for a place to go where they can safely gather with friends. When there is no oversight, youth can become disengaged and motivated by peer pressure. We need to protect our children from the risk posed by unstructured free time. And this is more important now in the face of the pandemic and growing racial disparities than ever before. This year, we face these injustices head on by passing a slate of police reform bills in Albany and here at City Hall, where our total budget was reorganized, reallocated to address these issues. However, the work is not done. I will continue to champion these issues on a community level and on a legislative level, especially when we talk about banning racial profiling. But combating injustice does not end there. We must also invest in our communities. Initiatives like the Community Recreation Center, which will have the capacity to transform lives and to transform our neighborhoods. When we invest in our youth, we invest in the future of our community, and the people of Flatbush and the people of Brooklyn will thrive. I also am proud to announce that this community center will be named after the great, wonderful Shirley Chisholm, who served as both the first African American and the first Caribbean American woman elected to Congress. As many of you know, Representative Chisholm was the first Black woman to run for a major party for the President of the United States. She was an inspiration to the large Flatbush community in all of Brooklyn and all of the United States. I believe that the legacy of the Representative Chisholm will live on through future generations who are inspired by her example, and that one day a young woman from our district will follow her footsteps to Capitol Hill and beyond. Now, as the chair of the Minority and Women Business Enterprise in the New York State Assembly, it also gives me great pleasure that we will be naming the Workforce Development and Technology Business Incubator Center that's within the Community Recreation Center after the late Dr. Roy Hastic, a Grenadian legendary community activist, founder of the Caribbean Chamber of Commerce and Industry, who was at the forefront of the Caribbean economic development growth in the state of New York. He was a force, and we want his legacy to be remembered by. I want to thank you all for your support. As you heard from the mayor, this center will be very comprehensive with a state-of-the-art indoor pool, something that this community have been deprived for so many years. And we're finally happy that we are getting some answers. We're going to get a pool, indoor track. We're going to get a kitchen for cooking classes. We're going to have a workforce development. We want to make sure that we reintegrate our youth and those who were previously incarcerated. We also want to acknowledge that we have a big immigration population and have immigration services and social services that will address things like healthcare and housing and dental and eyesight for our children. So we have a lot that we're going to be working with. Again, I would like to thank Mayor Bill de Blasio. I want to thank the New York City Parks, Commissioner Mitch Silver, and I want to thank Councilmember Farrah Lewis, who actually been on this project for a very, very long time. And if it wasn't for her advocacy, working with the mayor hand in hand, we would not be having this announcement today. So I want to thank her. And again, I want to thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Assembly Member, and thank you for fighting for us in Albany and fighting for justice every day. And since you said exactly correctly that Councilmember Farrah Lewis has been extraordinarily persistent in making sure this came to fruition, I want to congratulate you, Councilmember. Thank you for your huge focus on young people in particular and all that you and the City Council have done, but particularly your achievement today with this recreation center. We'd love to hear from you.
So, good morning, everyone. Thank you so much, Mayor de Blasio, for your support, for your advocacy, and for listening to East Flatbush and the people in my community. I also want to thank Assemblymember Bichot for her support, as well as Parks Commissioner Silver for his support in ensuring that we can now formally announce the Shirley Chisholm Community Recreation Center with the inclusion of the Roy Hastig Business and Tech Incubator in East Flatbush. I'm very proud of my community and for this new installment. Our young families and seniors have waited with much anticipation for a safe space that they can call their own, a hub for learning, recreation, community, and civic engagement. This state-of-the-art community and recreation center will be a beacon of inspiration and innovation, where people of all ages and backgrounds can connect and prosper with expanded access to much-needed resources in a centralized location. For years, residents in my community have advocated alongside elected officials for a community center in East Flatbush that would bridge gaps in opportunity, information, and technology. As our city and my district, the 45th Council District, like so many others across the city, grapple with the increase in shootings, this state-of-the-art recreation center will be a pivotal turning the tide. The center will help us curb gang and gun violence. And this is how we occupy our blocks and our corners. This is how we're gonna stop shootings and save lives. This is how we're gonna ensure that our community remains safe by taking a critical step forward. I will continue to work with the mayor, the Parks Department, as well as the Department of Design and Construction, in hopes we can expeditiously break ground so that this recreation center can finally come into fruition. Congratulations, District 45. Thank you so much, Mayor. Thank you, Assembly Member, and thank you, Commissioner Silver.
Thank you, and you will make sure we expeditiously move this. I'm sure you will, so I'll be hearing from you. All right, now, going back where I started at the very beginning today, we're celebrating this good news about the Recreation Center, but we're also dealing with a huge challenge today, and that's the heat we're all facing. And I want everyone to recognize, take this heat situation seriously. Everyone, look, New Yorkers do a great job of looking out for each other. In this situation, please, look out for the people in your life. Look out for the people on your block, in your building. Seniors in particular, make sure they're okay and they have what they need. Everyone's got to stay hydrated. People should not be out in the heat any longer than they have to be. So take it seriously today and tomorrow. We're talking about temperatures and heat index nearing 100. So this is serious stuff. Now, the city will have cooling centers open today and tomorrow across all 5 boroughs. To find those cooling centers, and please, if you need them, take advantage of them. They're a good, safe place to be. You can go to www.nyc.gov/chillout. And of course, you can call 311. Anyone who goes to one of these centers, you're going to find there's social distancing, there's face coverings. We're taking very seriously. We have to continue to fight against the coronavirus, but right now the heat's front and center. So you can go to one of these centers and know you'll be safe in every way. And we opened up public pools, a number of public pools this Friday. We have 8 more coming this coming Saturday, August 1st, and we'll talk about that again later in the week. But already we've seen the pools that have opened, a huge number of New Yorkers coming out to enjoy them and appreciate them. And again, doing it safely with all the right social distancing. So the pools are going to help a lot, and more coming up and opening up this Saturday. Okay, let's go to our indicators. Number 1, daily number of people admitted to hospitals for suspected COVID-19 threshold is 200. Today's report, 54 patients. Number 2, daily number of people in health and hospitals ICUs, the threshold 375. Today, 286. And number 3, most important, number of people testing positive citywide for COVID-19 threshold 15%. And today, so again, this is the best number we've seen. We've seen it a few times, but we're back at it again today. 1% in New York City. That's absolutely outstanding, and that's because of all the hard work all of you have put in. And I keep saying it, everybody, please do not let up. I was out and around the city this weekend. I saw a lot of people with face coverings, not as many as I'd like to see. Everyone, remember how important those face coverings are. Keep that social distancing. Help the people in your life to remember how important it is. Let me do a few words in Spanish. Debido al calor extremo, los centros de enfriamiento estarán abiertos hoy y mañana martes. Todos los que visiten los centros tienen que usar mascarillas y mantener la distancia entre uno y otro. Necesitamos protegernos del calor y también del virus. With that, let's turn to our colleagues in the media, and please let me know the name and outlet of each journalist.
Hi all. We have with us here today Assemblymember Bichot, Councilmember Lewis, Police Commissioner Shea, Parks Commissioner Silver, Emergency Management Commissioner Criswell, and Senior Advisor Dr. Varma. With that, we'll start with Andrew from NBC.
Morning, everybody. Hope everyone is doing well. Mayor, my first question is about schools. Our understanding is that Jumaane Williams, the public advocate today, calling on a 1-month delay in the start of the school year, and then after that, asking that the DOE open it for kids under 10 only. I'm wondering your reaction to that plan, and to clarify, when exactly will parents know what the plan is at their school?
What, Andrew, what was that last part? When will parents know?
Yeah, because there had been some confusion about you saying you wouldn't make the call until September, so maybe you can clarify that. But
Yeah.
Essentially, your reaction to Jumaane Williams' plan to delay the school year, and then if you could clarify when exactly parents will know what the plan is at their individual school.
Sure. First, appreciate the public advocate's suggestions. We'll certainly look at them. Right now, our intention is to open on schedule and to open with all grade levels, but again, with blended learning. Some part of the week kids in school, some part of the week kids online, and then for those kids and families who prefer just online, that will always be an option available to all families. If they want to do all remote at any point, they can do that. So to the bigger point, Andrew, the fact is, and I think I've said it a number of times, I really want to try and nail this point. We right now have a plan, Plan A. Plan A is open in September, maximum number of kids in schools, blended learning. We've talked about it now for weeks and weeks. Every individual school is taking that basic plan and refining it according to their own space reality and their ability to accommodate kids. And they'll be speaking with their parent community over the next weeks and give them exactly a sense of how the system will go. So parents will have ample time, weeks ahead of school opening, to know exactly what the schedule will be. We're putting more and more childcare options into play. All of this is moving intensely in a crisis atmosphere we're creating as we go along. We've got 6 weeks to put it together, and we will. But again, remember the health realities that we see around the country and we see around the world. Today, at late July, we're doing very, very well in New York City. You heard 1% testing positive. We have to hang on to that. 6 weeks from now is a long time. So the logical thing to do is we're going to hear from the state in about 10 days or so. They're going to give the basic decision. Then we're going to keep building from there. And then we're going to inform parents of what their specific plan for their school will be. And then ultimately, we have to see exactly what the healthcare situation is in the days leading up to school beginning. So I was a public school parent for the whole time of my kids being in school. Right now, parents should plan very clearly on their kids being in school if they want them to be in school. If they prefer them to be remote, that's great. But we're all going to be watching the data, the science, the healthcare indicators till we get very close to school beginning. And it would be irresponsible not to, Andrew. It would be irresponsible to make a decision in July or in August for something that's going to happen in September. That's what we've learned from looking around the country. Make the final decisions based on the facts at that time. Go ahead.
Just as a follow-up to that, what do you think of the idea of delaying the school year for 1 month so that you really know that the precautions are in place and that you have enough teachers? Because part of what we're hearing is you'll make the plan, And then it may be that you don't have enough teachers to make that hybrid plan actually work. So does it make sense to skew the start of the year to make sure you have the bodies in place and to make sure you have the procedures in place?
At this point, no, Andrew. It doesn't add to the equation to delay. We've surveyed parents. They desperately, a huge majority wants to get kids back in school for the right reasons, to help them learn again and for their social development, because they know it's a safe place and there's food available and health support available. So that is the plan, but we'll watch every step along the way. Huge amount of energy and effort is going into working through the pieces. We're working very closely with the unions representing all the folks who work in our schools. And we have a plan. And if something happens that causes us to need to adjust that plan, we'll talk about it. But right now, we are moving forward with our plan.
Next, we have Henry from Bloomberg.
Hello, Mr. Mayor. How are you doing today?
Good, Henry. How you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you. My question has to do with your support of violence interrupters, cure violence, community-centered crime fighting that's beyond police. The investment the city has made is relatively minuscule, right? I mean, it's like 39 million. If this program is effective, why is the investment so small?
Henry, I respect the question. I would say that there's an assumption in that question that it kind of misses the history. You go back to the beginning of our administration, the city of New York was barely investing at all, and we have steadily increased the amount of investment and continue to work with this model to prove its efficacy, and it keeps coming back clear that this works and it helps. And we've been building out the investment more and more, and we will continue to do that. So I think the point is a lot of these organizations have been building up themselves from the grassroots. A lot of them have been creating organizations from scratch. It's not like going to some big, nonprofit that's been around for decades. These are truly grassroots community organizations. It takes time for them to build. But no, I think the growth pattern's been very strong, and it will continue to develop further.
Okay, if I could just follow up on that question. If the programs are so effective, why are we seeing so much violent why are they unable to stem the violent crime that we're seeing?
Well, I appreciate the question, but again, I think everything has to come back to this perfect storm we're in. And I will say it every time I'm asked. You cannot take a pandemic and layer it with a massive unemployment crisis that only rivals the Great Depression, families that don't have any income anymore, kids that can't go to school, the court system not being able to function, a huge number of police officers were sick for a long time. You cannot take all these dislocations and add them one on top of another on top of another, and all the frustration and pain that people have been through and expect business as usual. So we're dealing with an extraordinarily high bar here in terms of the hand we've all been dealt. But I can tell you for a fact, Cure Violence Movement and Crisis Management System have been out there making a huge difference. They've been doing it in terms of social distancing. You've seen them out in force in recent weeks addressing violence in the community. We've seen some incredible success stories over the years, and now we see this movement coming forward in this new situation to find solutions. So no question in my mind, this is part of the solution overall.
Next, we have Juliet from 1010 Wins.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Mayor. How are you doing?
Good, Juliet. How you been?
Fine, thank you. Wanted to bring up the encampment issue. A listener sent me photos of an encampment at Prospect Park Pavilion at Plaza West next to the Green Market. He says he contacts 311 5 times, nothing happens. Calls the local precinct, told it's not a police matter. I hear similar stories from others who reach out. So is there a way to have a proactive, consistent response to identify and dismantle these encampments?
Yeah. Juliet, thank you for raising that. One, yes, that's what we've had for years. That's why when I said years ago that we were getting rid of the encampments, we set up a system to very systematically make sure they're identified, they were addressed, including offering all the people involved the opportunity to come into shelter and get the services and support they need. So homeless services plays a crucial role, obviously, sanitation, NYPD, any and all agencies we need. Some are in parks. Parks Department plays a role, and it's worked overwhelmingly. Again, we've had a lot of dislocation in recent months, but we are going to make sure that this is put together clearly and strongly. It is a citywide strategy. To your specific example, I'm glad you're raising it. We're going to go deal with that today. Whenever I get these reports of someone at a precinct said something, I really appreciate if you ever get specifics. I want to make sure the precinct commander knows that someone in the precinct said that. Of course it is a police matter. It's first and foremost the Department of Homeless Services matter, but police are there to assist if needed, and no one should ever blow off a problem in the city government. And certainly I want to know why 311 didn't respond more effectively. So we're going to go do a little bit of investigation. And Juliet, if you could give us any details you have, that'd be really helpful, but we will address that site today.
Yeah, okay, but my experience with people that I speak to reporting these to me, the responses are very inconsistent. I've seen personally where encampment material is either completely removed and where there is follow-up by the NYPD with local residents on a daily basis, and others where the material is just piled up down the block so that people who return to that spot just take it back and lay it back out. So what is the better way to do this? You know, when your office calls out, there is the response, but it seems like unless that happens, it's very inconsistent.
It should be consistent. It's obviously the former, not the latter. Remove the material and offer the services and not allow the encampment to come back. But Juliet, to be fair, we have managed now for years to make sure there was not the kinds of encampments we had in the past, which were large and numerous in New York City. We'll fight them back every time. We'll give people the services they need. But you're absolutely right. I want a consistent approach, and the consistent approach is there's no possibility of the encampment reasserting. But I will tell you, having asked many, many people this question, they are a rarity in this city, and we want them to be non-existent.
Next, we have Julia from the Post.
Hey, good Monday morning, Mr. Mayor. This is for you and the commissioner. As I mentioned to both of you last week, the slowdown in courts does not correlate with the sharp uptick in shootings, according to the NYPD's own data. For example, 16% of the people arrested on gun charges currently have an open case. So what do you attribute that increase, and how can you fix it outside of returning the courts to full speed?
Yeah, I don't agree with your assumption. I think there is a huge piece of this that is the fact that there is no outcome. If someone is arrested, there's no process. Remember, whether someone is in jail based on arrest or out of jail after being arrested, on bail or whatever it may be, you can't adjudicate the case until there's a trial, and that determines whether someone should be allowed to be on the streets or not. And jury of their peers and the whole 9 yards, we just haven't had that anywhere near the level we need. So it is, by definition, a crucial piece of the equation. And again, Julia, against the backdrop of a perfect storm where many, many factors are affecting the situation, including things that the NYPD is working to do better as well. We're not saying there's one piece to this. And anyone who tries to typify it that way, they're just lying through their teeth. I've said 1,000 times, the commissioner said 1,000 times. It's a perfect storm. There are many, many factors. City of New York needs to do more. NYPD needs to do more. But if you don't have a functioning court system, you can't follow through the process the way we normally do. Commissioner. But if you don't have a functioning I think you're on mute. We can't hear you, Commissioner. Hold on a sec. You may be on mute.
Hey, Julia, how are you,
There you
Mr.
go.
Mayor? Can you hear me?
Yep, there you go.
Yep. So Julia, I would turn the question around and just say, in the last 4 months, I would ask somebody to answer the question, how many people have had a court case disposed of, which resulted in them being sentenced to state prison or Rikers Island? And you're going to see very low numbers, because cases really are not being disposed of, to my knowledge, unless there is no jail attached to it. And you know, the court system, the violence question, I mean, it is indisputable. We have about 2,100 gun cases just in the last 2 years that are still open, half of them indicted, and almost all of them are walking around next to you and me every day on the streets. It is not disputable.
Go ahead, Julia.
Okay, my second question is on the Cure Violence movement. You mentioned, Mr. Mayor, that it takes a while for these grassroots movements to get up and running. The leaders of the movements say the same thing. So until they really become full force, what is the NYPD doing to stop this increased bloodshed? We had 15 shootings on Sunday, including 7 murders, 47 for the week compared to just 17 last year. So how long until the NYPD's new crime fighting strategy kicks in? And what are you going to do to keep the violence down in the meantime?
I appreciate the question. Julia, a week ago, the commissioner and I outlined the basic strategy, and he'll speak to it. But basically, it is taking more officers and applying them to the very pinpointed areas where we're seeing the biggest problems. It is bringing out the community, not just Cure Violence, but all community leaderships and organizations to be a part of pushing back against the violence. And we will continue to develop a Cure Violence and crisis management system over the coming months and years and making it a bigger part of what we do in New York City. But really, again, it comes back to the NYPD's absolutely proven ability to adjust to a new challenge. That is what CompStat is all about. This is the whole concept we've seen for a quarter century. Many big challenges the NYPD was able to overcome with refined strategies. And the commissioner, I give him credit. I've watched him in CompStat. No one understands this ability to adjust and take in new realities, new information and try new strategies. No one understands it better than Commissioner Shea. So, Commissioner, you want to add?
Commissioner?
Yeah, good morning, Julia. Again, so when you look at what we saw last week, absolutely unacceptable. You're right. 15 shootings just on Sunday. That was following a day of pretty heavy protests in Manhattan on Saturday. When you look at the 15 shootings, 8 of them were in Brooklyn. When you look at what we're doing in terms of the mayor outlined it, putting significant resources into the areas where we know that there is ongoing gang violence occurring. We're also working closely with community members, local elected officials, just raising awareness in these areas and trying to get a grassroots approach as well as pinpoint deployment and investigations. Just last week, we closed 11 separate murders. They did not occur last week, but this is moving backwards. But the arrests occurred last week. We closed an additional 14 shooting incidents that were non-fatal just last week. I think if you look at the breadth of the NYPD, whether it's my Twitter account and at NYPD News, Terry Monahan's, or the individual precincts, you're seeing gun arrests picking up and starting to be made, which is a positive. And I think all of this is a start, but this is going to take some time to address the significant uptick in violence that we've seen.
Next, we have Rich from WCBS 880.
Mr. Mayor, good morning.
Hey, Rich, how you doing?
I'm okay. Listen, I'm just wondering, you may have had eyes on this. So the cleanup of the graffiti at the DOE and the Dinkins building and the old Surrogates Court, how is that going? I mean, I assume you're taking a look at it as you go by.
Yeah, from what I've seen, it's coming along well. I have not looked carefully enough at every nook and cranny to know, and I know some of the older buildings, there's been a couple of challenges, but the last I've seen, I think it's going well. And look, this again, anytime we see this on a public building, we are absolutely going to clean it up because we don't accept it being there. But I think that's coming along well. Go ahead, Rich.
Okay, and this is a little bit out of left field here. So I was taking a look at the seal of the city of New York as we sat sort of waiting for the news conference here. It's a man in pantaloons holding a rope with a loop at the end of it, presumably a trap or something. And then on the other side of the windmill and a couple of barrels, you have a Native American who's holding a bow. I'm just wondering whether you or your commission or somebody is taking a look at that seal and wondering how relevant it is these days.
That's a great question. I think we have to look at a lot of things, and I appreciate you asking the question, Rich. From time to time, I've looked at it. It's a good question. It's something of an unclear image what it's saying to us, but I think that's exactly right. It's the kind of thing a commission should look at carefully and decide if it still makes sense for the 21st century.
Next, we have Deborah Lee from Bronx Free Press and Manhattan Times.
Hey, good morning, everyone. Can you hear me?
Yeah, how you doing?
I'm well, thanks. Wanted to follow up. The city controller released a letter today questioning why it is that an audit that he conducted in April 2018 that showed that NYCHA playgrounds, the majority of them, nearly 800, had dangerous or deficient conditions, and that it's not been addressed. And in fact, since the NYCHA playgrounds have been reopened, that has not been, neither has it been addressed nor has a plan, which was promised to address these issues, been released. Can you speak to that?
Yeah, we'll get you more details, Deborah Lee, but I just think that is not accurate. NYCHA playgrounds, real work has been done to improve the issues. Some are still being worked on, but they're a relatively small number that have any serious issue that, as I understand it, causes them to be offline and more major work has to be done. A huge effort was undertaken by NYCHA to reopen playgrounds once that was allowed. And to my understanding, a really big majority of their playgrounds are up and running. So we'll get you the latest facts, but I don't think that characterization is accurate.
All right, and then on another topic, there's been a renewed call to have Commissioner Shea more specifically address why it is that it seems that police officers are just not being disciplined, or for that matter, that the concerns are not being taken seriously of those that say that violent actions and overly aggressive actions by police officers are just not being addressed. And some have gone so far as to call for his resignation or to ask you to prompt his resignation. And so I wonder if you could speak specifically to that renewed concern, and also to the incident that had the police officer essentially assail a homeless person and have those charges then both by you and the commissioner questioned. I mean, essentially, you know, that incident in particular has sparked some new concerns. Can you speak to that, please?
Yeah, sure. I mean, first of all, the commissioner's here, and I'll let him speak to it as well. I've been very clear about my faith in Commissioner Shea. I've known him over these whole 7 years of the administration. I've seen what he can do, both in terms of addressing crime and violence, but also his belief in neighborhood policing, and even more so in focusing the police on working with young people in a whole new way. And you'll remember back in February, Commissioner talked about a new vision for the NYPD. I talked about it in my State of the City. And if it had not been for a global pandemic, that's exactly what we'd be deep in the middle of right now, reorienting the NYPD towards a different and better relationship with young people. And we still have to do that now as we fight back against the coronavirus. But on the specific reality, I want to be clear. Every single incident, every single video, not only needs to be investigated quickly, but we need to show results to the public quickly. This was not the historic reality. We need to do it now. We need to be transparent about the outcomes. We now, thank God, have the change in Albany in terms of the 50A law that's going to allow us to be much more transparent. But what I think we have not done well enough yet, and it's a new reality, but we have to get this right, is to show the public very consistently, here's a video, here's a case, here's the immediate decision, whether it's a modification or suspension or not. Here's the decision on whether there's further discipline, here's the outcome, and that has to be seen in a direct line in real time. And I've said it very publicly and had the conversation with the commissioner. This is what we need to do better. Now, even in the height of some of the most challenging realities weeks ago, the commissioner made it a priority to address some of the incidents that were particularly troubling and to either suspend or modify officers and indicate that the discipline process was starting for larger charges. We just need to keep that as consistent as possible. Sometimes it's made more complicated, Deborah Lee, when there is, again, another part of government involved, and some in the media have said, oh, that's not a big issue. It is a big issue, and it's something we need to sort out and streamline with those agencies. So that's the overall situation. You can expect to see a more routinized approach going forward that'll, I think, be more helpful to you and the public tracing each of these cases. Commissioner, if you could speak to that and specifically speak to the situation with the homeless individual, because if we can bring some closure to that, I think it would be helpful for everyone.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for the question, Mr. Mayor. Thank you. Listen, I think, Mr. Mayor, you touched on most of it, and we certainly have spoken, you and I, a number of times about the need to be as transparent as possible and do it in a swift manner. But the other thing that's missing from that is there has to be an investigative process. And it has to be done right. And I think I've balanced that. Where I see something wrong, I've come out strongly, and I've been pretty swift in a couple of cases recently in terms of changing duty status or doing other things. I make the decision as I see fit, and I'm going to continue to do that as the police commissioner. And I balance always, at the end of the day, what I think is right. And you know, you're going to have probably some people that don't agree with it and some people that do. And that's what I've found across the entire city. In terms of the case with the transit officer, I would just caution people to remember that use of force does not equate to misconduct. And I think sometimes people see a video and anytime there is force, which does not appear to be pretty, and sometimes, in fact, it appears to be ugly, but this is the environment sometimes that our officers are working in. And use of force, whether it's on a detail or a protest involving a baton, mace, physical force can certainly be inappropriate, and it can be excessive, and it can be misconduct. But it also can be completely appropriate. And those are tools that the officers are given. So that's what we do. We examine the facts of the case. We examine any evidence. We take into account the complaints that are made. I feel good that there is independent oversight of the NYPD as well with the Civilian Complaint Review Board, who our Internal Affairs Bureau works hand in hand with. And I think most importantly is we got to get it right, and the people have to have faith in the process that people will be held accountable. To the incident on the train, I've spoken to this last week. There will not be any change of duty status for that officer. Is it exactly how I would like the incident to have turned out? Absolutely not. I would like the incident to be able to be handled with no force, as a matter of fact. But when you look at the entirety of the incident, when you look at it from the disregarding the lawful orders of the police, they're going into the other train, they're refusing to leave numerous commands, and then at one point putting his hands on the officer. While it wasn't pretty, it wasn't something that I felt required a change in duty status. We'll certainly work with the officer to receive additional training on top of what he already has. But I think also, let's be honest, training is not an absolute cure-all, and it is effective, and it can be one more tool that the officers have, but it also requires a dynamic environment in which people sometimes don't respond to the training that's used.
Last two for today. Next, we have Dana from the New York Times.
Hi, Mr. Mayor. Commissioner Shea has said police reforms are handcuffing the police and suggested that city leaders are cowards for embracing the reforms. Why are you comfortable giving Commissioner Shea so much leeway to criticize city policy? It's hard to imagine you would give that sort of leeway to other city commissioners.
Look, the commissioner and I had numerous talks about this, and we were dealing with a very, very dynamic, multi-layered situation. And we had honest talks about the fact that there is a profound need for change and reform. And there's also realities that have left officers trying to figure out how to do their job effectively in this environment and with changing rules. And that some of that is hard to do in a fast timeline, and some of it is an imperfect reality. So this was based on a real dialogue, and his belief that it was important to express the concerns publicly in the name of some kind of balance, in the name of making sure people understood what it could mean in terms of the complexities of fighting crime and reducing violence. So the best way to say it, Dana, it's a very fair question, but I'd say to you, it's one thing when a member of my administration comes to me and says, this is something that we need to talk about. We need to express these concerns. And I understand that, and we agree on that, versus a situation where there's not that kind of process. That's the bottom line here.
Dana,
thanks. Second question for you. In your State of the State address in February, which of course was
State of the city.
State of the city. Thank you. You said you would be building 7 new recreation centers. Does this new one fall within that 7? What's the status of that? Has COVID made that, goal unachievable?
No, in fact, Dana, we are doubling down on that goal. In the months after the crisis struck with the coronavirus, a lot of things were on hold. But in fact, we made the decision in shifting capital funding from the NYPD to youth centers and recreation centers. That allowed us to reinvigorate the effort because, look, we've had to make a lot of tough decisions in our budget and a lot of things couldn't move forward, but finding money from one agency and applying it to another one so we could get this going again, that opened the door. So not only in terms of the Nostrum Playground in Flatbush, but also a number of the others that we announced in the last few days around the 5 boroughs and particularly around NYCHA developments. No, that plan is now back on track.
Last question for today. We have Gloria from New York 1.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Mayor. I wanted to ask again on this question about the courts. It's my understanding that part of the problem as it pertains to gun charges specifically is that grand juries are not convening right now, and that is part of the governor's pause order. So have you had a discussion with him about this, perhaps figuring out a way to bring back the grand jury process in a way that can be done safely and still, do the things that need to be done right now in order to prevent spread of the virus?
It's a very important question, Gloria. Thank you. Look, that pause order was in effect, and I'll let the commissioner speak to this as well. That was in effect until the announcement that the grand juries would start to reconvene. I believe the target date is August 10th. What we're trying to say is I understand 100% why there couldn't be business as usual, later in March, April, May. But now that the state has decided to bring grand juries back, the point I'm making and the commissioner's making is we need them to come back to full strength. It can't just be a small number of grand juries. We need to get back to the level we were at back in February. Because, Gloria, think about the backlog that exists now. And again, just think about for a moment, if someone has committed an act of gun violence and they're out in our community, ask people who represent communities what they feel about that. They want to see justice. They want to see adjudication of the case. If someone, in fact, is guilty and should not be on the streets, that resolution is absolutely crucial to the community. If someone's innocent, they're innocent, and they then go about their lives. But you can't go through that process without the grand juries meeting, and we've got so many cases backlogged that we need to get back to full strength and work off that backlog as quickly as possible. So from my understanding, Gloria, the state has fully okayed that. What we're saying is we want to work with the court system and the DAs to get that to maximum. We'll do whatever they need to help get them there. Commissioner, you want to add?
Yeah, I think, Gloria, thank you for the question. When you look at the grand juries, it's a big piece of it. I think it's a much bigger discussion when you look at the jail population, when you look at the state prison population, when you look at the downward pressure on people not going into either of the above. When you look at the lowering of bails or the requirement that there can be no bail in some circumstances, all of these things play in. And Gloria, I would, to the earlier question, I would ask, the question is how many people in the last 4 months have been sentenced to city jail or state prison because of an ongoing criminal case? And I think you're going to see a very extremely low number. There's no trials going on. And when you look at no grand juries and no trials, to my knowledge, I could be wrong, but no trials, and then you start saying, sit down in a room with district attorneys, defense attorneys, and what is the incentive to plea in this environment? And what we are seeing is there really is no incentive to take a plea when there's no ultimate hammer at the end of the process or potential hammer. So even though maybe 1% of cases go to trial. It's always a part of the negotiation that takes place in this criminal justice system of ours. It's not perfect, but it's the best we have, and it works at times. Sometimes we'd like it to work better, but in this environment, it's just not working as designed. I think that's plain for anyone to see.
And just to finish that point, Gloria, just think about it for a moment. We've had an important discussion about bail over the last few years. A very good and important reform was made. There were some outstanding issues. I think back in April, a lot of those issues were addressed well by the legislature. But here's the bottom line. Whatever someone's status, they get bail, they don't get bail, they're held pending trial, it all has to lead to a trial. So if someone is out on bail, for example, and there's no trial in sight, that is not what was intended by anyone. The intention was that there's supposed to be speedy trial. I mean, it's literally in the Constitution, right? There's supposed to be a concept of justice happening on a timeline so that, God forbid, someone has committed an act of violence, there is an actual consequence. And one last point, this is why I often refer to that what Bill Bratton said to me back in 2014, that what's misunderstood in New York City, 8.6 million people, and it is a few thousand people who do the most serious violence, only a few thousand. But if those few thousand never experience the consequences because there are not enough trials, and if you can't take down a gang because there's not enough trials, then unfortunately the violence grows. We've got to bring this piece back into the equation fully. Go ahead, Gloria.
Okay, thank you. And if I could follow up on the bail point and speedy trial point, some of the, especially the public defenders that have been sort of speaking out against you on this, say that it's rare when cases even go to trial, that these it's not often resolved in a speedy manner. And if a gun charge is bail eligible to begin with, which they are, and this was the case before the pandemic, they say that the point that you're making is misguided, that it's not like a person is arrested, they show up in jail that night, then the next day they're presented before a grand jury. It's not necessarily a speedy process. So can you just respond to that?
Sure. Gloria, no one is saying, I think Dermot made a really important point, and it would be true of our justice system, it would be true of American democracy in general. No one's saying this is perfect. But at least what we found, and part of why, let's just use a real hard fact, for 6 years, crime went down. And a functioning criminal justice system was part of that. And Dermot just made the point, when there was an atmosphere of actual consequences, it encouraged movement in the system, whether it was a plea bargain in some cases or going through a trial and getting to a resolution. And we only want the truth, right? If someone's innocent, we want them to be freed. If someone has hurt their fellow New Yorker, they should suffer whatever appropriate consequence. But think about it for a moment now. If there's no outcome in sight, because remember, you're talking about August 10th, just a small beginning. So the notion of when will the court system function fully, and when do you create that kind of movement again, that momentum that says if someone's done something wrong, there's eventually going to be a larger consequence, it really throws off everything. There's just no question about it. And it's, again, we cannot deny that we were on a really clean, clear track of lowering crime, and then there's a huge disruption, clearly because of the coronavirus, but we've got to deal with it in our way. We just can't do it alone. So I'd argue to you, getting the court system back to full strength creates that momentum again. Are the trials speedy enough? No. I'd love to see that. We've talked about this a lot too, and I know our colleagues in Albany have been working on this. We all want the trial system to go faster for everyone's benefit and to help us reduce jail population. But if we thought there was a speedy trial problem last year and the beginning of this year, a lot of us were fighting for speedier trials. Well, then try on for size very few trials at all, and huge delays because there's just not grand juries sitting. So again, we've all got to figure this out together, and we want to partner with the court system and with the DAs to get it right. And I'll just finish on that note. Everyone, look, this is a problem we can overcome. And it goes back to, this is just the history of fighting back against crime in this city. Look at the last quarter century, the success year after year of communities and NYPD together fighting back crime. We know it can be done. Look at the city's heroic efforts fighting back the coronavirus. We've seen with our own eyes, and the rest of the country is now looking to New York City and say, how did they possibly do that? We're going to keep doing that. But the point is, we can solve our problems. We have the ability to do it, but everyone's got to come to the table and work together. So again, community members are out there, elected officials are out there, cure violence, crisis management systems out there, NYPD's out there. We got to do more and more, but we're saying to our colleagues in the court system, the DAs, come together with us. Let's figure this out. Whatever we can do to contribute to a solution, we want to, because when we all put our minds together, there's no question in my mind we can overcome this crisis. Thank you, everyone.